Can you feel it? Spring is in the air, my friends, and all the little roots are waking up. All the little shoots are perking up their heads. And with this comes an abundance of food, an abundance of vitality, because there is work to be done this year. This is the time when we want to start to connect in with the plants, start to grow out our feelers, and bring in more of that fifth element of life, that nutrition, that vitality that the plants have to share with us. I find spring to be my favorite time of year because there's so much potential. So let's get out and connect in with some shoots and some roots. This is a baby. This little flower pot. Bottoms up. So in this video, I want to share with you a bit about harvesting in the spring, about working with many of the shoots and roots of the spring season. Essentially, this is the time of year where many of the plants don't put out their anti-herbivore compounds. What do I mean by that? Things that are going to be tough and fibrous, or oxalic acids, and things that are hard on the kidneys or hard on the digestive system. Many plants in the initial spring, their shoots are just that first bit of life essence, that potential. And so they'll put all of their energy into just growing up. And this will make them quite tender and quite fresh and fleshy. The reason we want to eat at this time of year, these kind of plants, is because it's actually a palate shift. It's a cleanser to the digestive tract. Typically in the spring, our bodies were biologically hardwired to cleanse, to shed off what no longer serves us from the winter, to pick up and pull in some of that potential to build and fortify and get ready for our season to come. So in spring, my favorite thing to do is just graze, to just nibble. And so I want to share with you some of the plants that we can do that with, but also some of the roots we might lock in and pull out some of their nutrients. Ironically enough, many of the roots in the spring are higher in those compounds that are cleansing for the liver and supporting the blood and cardiovascular system and moving toxins out of the kidneys. Whereas in the fall, many of the roots are more blood sugar stabilizing and energizing, and they have more inulin and stuff like this in them. So we'll talk a bit about that, but let's just get started in looking at plants and doing a little bit of a spring herb walk. So many of the plants we're going to look at are common weeds or plants you might see on the side of a path. These are many of our best edibles that are always growing around us. And I love this concept of people plants, the ones that grow right next to us. Those are the ones we need to work with. So right here where I'm in this spot, I've got like 7 or 8 easy to recognize and easy to eat plants. First off, one of my very favorites is this Siberian miner's lettuce. Now this is just an easy, tender, fresh, fleshy plant. You can see as it's really simple. There's a couple of types of miner's lettuce. So, you can Google them, you can look in your ID books and kind of figure out what they are. But around me, I've got tons of this growing underneath these maple groves. So I'll just come along and start picking them. They're best first thing in the spring. A little further on, they've got more of that oxalic acid, which can be hard on the kidneys and just hard on the digestive tract in general. But I just love these tender greens. So I've got with me a couple of just Tupperwares, and we're gonna make a little spring salad. When it comes to picking, I'm gonna usually just use my fingers, but I can easily use scissors or a knife. I'm gonna take just a few from each plant. I'm not gonna take them all from one area, but just kind of graze on there. And there's something that's interesting in studying plants like this. They've seen that when a herbivore nibbles on the plants, it makes them stronger. So taking a little bit, whether it's nibbling on them or picking them, pruning them, so to speak, deadheading some of the little flowers, that can make these plants stronger. And what we'll find is that as we do this regularly, these plants become more vital. So it's not like we're just pulling the whole plant. I'm not taking the roots. I'm just going to take a bit of these tops, grazing from all around as if I were a deer or if I were an animal like that. So Siberian miner's lettuce, one of my favorites as a base of our spring salad. And I'll try to pick the youngest, most tender looking ones. So in this same area, there is also a bunch of this chickweed. Now, most of you might know chickweed. It is a great plant to eat. Very soothing, good for rashes and inflammation and all kinds of digestive stuff, anti-inflammatory, but it's also just a very tasty green. So I love picking this chickweed in the early spring. Often you'll find it on the sides of roads. It's my first spring green out of the garden usually because it's like a weed. You can see here's a nice little patch right here. And I can pick that whole bit right there. Of course, I'm going to do a little garbling, which is to pull off the parts that are not chickweed or not edible. But there's a bunch all in here. And I'll just get a little more here. Sometimes I'll even just get in and graze on them just like that. Now I'm also going to just keep looking around and see some of these other plants. Now some of these that look kind of like dandelions in the spring, if I don't know exactly what it is or I'm not 100% sure, when it's a spring herb, I can usually do a little gentle nibbling and taste it. Oh yeah, that is going to be good in my salad. I'm not even sure what this is. It's in that dandelion family. Another one right in here, just as I'm nibbling, something I love to do is to taste grass. Grass shoots first thing in the spring. You can usually pick them and pull back those outer shells, and then just these little bits, usually eating about that much. It's something about it, it feels like it's like contemplation time. So food for thought, or thought with food. I can just pull these shoots back and just sit here, contemplate about life for a moment. That's some good life. Looks like we've got a little Herbal Robert here. Now this isn't one that I would typically eat, but you know, give it a little nibble, tune in. Definitely Herbal Robert. This has quite a medicinal quality to it. And when it's small and young like this, it's not all that bad of an edible. Something I highly recommend you do is that you start to taste and sample the genetic material of the species in your ecosystem. Doing this safe, of course, but getting out and just really connecting in with that. I believe that the body reads chemistry the way we might read a book or watch a movie or a documentary. It's how we learn, it's how our body learns. So picking up on the way the plants are being affected by the environment in your ecosystem teaches your body how to be more resilient and more in tune with that environment. So nibbling, just a little bit. So here we are, we've got some grass shoots, we've got some of these miner's lettuce, some chickweed, a little bit of this dandelion, and oh, here we go. See these are little maple blossoms. These are little maple seedlings. Now I know that these get pretty hard later in the season. They're not going to be good, but if I look at this intuitively, this plant, I can see that as I pull this back, the tender bits are the young bottoms. So I'll eat that. I'll eat it up to a point. Now it's getting a little more fibrous up here. So maybe I'll start again at the top. No, top's not so good. So really, I'm just going to take the youngest bottom shoots of these and eat just a little bit of that, just to tune into the maple blossoms. Now again, same area, haven't really moved further than a couple of inches. I see that we've got some bed straw or some cleavers here. Let's see, yeah, there's a little bit of young bed straw. These are great. This is a great plant to nibble on. So, oh yeah, we're gonna go find a bit more of this. I'm sure there's a bunch more around here. Add this to our salad. All right, let's see a little more bed straw here. There we go. Here's a nice little patch. Actually, I think this is a type, looks more like cleavers. Sometimes it's hard with these really young plants, but we'll put a little bit of that. Again, when this one gets older, it is really hard to eat. So I wouldn't be eating it much when it's older, but right now, first thing in the spring, before there's a lot of other food around, this is the perfect time to start eating some of these. Here's one that I want to talk about. This is more of a shoot. And I see these growing all through here. It is this wild blackberry. So blackberry is a plant that we see all over the place, right? We've been tripping all over this for years. This is the traveling along the ground blackberry. What I'm actually looking for is these blackberry shoots and roots. So in the spring, the beautiful thing about spring is that often the ground is moist and we can get these roots. So these young, tender blackberry shoots like this are actually edible. Now they will get spiky and not be that good. And I might only eat a little bit of that, but then I'll maybe also pull out the kind of tougher outer fiber and get inside and Just nibble on some of the inner bits. And then these roots, I'll cut this off like this, are a really potent medicine. So just to tune into that, this is a great medicine for the prostate, for the cardiovascular system. It's anti-inflammatory. It's good for the liver, digestive system in general. It's going to wake up the body. Blackberry roots, raspberry roots, any of these kind of, even thimbleberry roots and this type of plant has got a lot of medicine in it. So there's a root we might start harvesting, put them in a different container. More today, what we're going to do is collect some samples so we kind of get a feel for it. But I'll just follow these trailing blackberries. When it comes to spring roots, if the ground is moist, I got gloves we can use, and I've got a hori here I can use to dig up like this. But most of the time, what I do is I just kind of intuitively with my fingers, using my eyes as my fingers, I just get in there and I start to roll around and jog the roots a little bit, teasing them slowly out of the soil. And then for me, I just bang them off. Get them like that, you see that? There we go. Trying to clean them as much as I can before they go into my basket. There's a nice little blackberry root. We might make that into some medicine. Now you see here too, I'm using these Tupperwares. Typically, if I am going to be out foraging for more than an hour, a couple hours, I'll try to use a Tupperware where I've poked holes in the lid so that it can, the humidity doesn't get trapped in there and they can breathe. In this case, I'm only a few minutes from my house, so we'll eat a couple more of these greens and we'll just use regular Tupperwares. Okay, we're just gonna keep walking along this path and see what else we can find. Oh, I mean, I don't have to go very far. Right here, I can see in here, here's a nice plant. This is a favorite of mine on the West Coast here. This is Marsh Skullcap. And it's young. I'll pull this whole one. I know there's a bunch more. Yeah, see, I see another one here. There's a few. So for your sake, normally I wouldn't pull the whole plant because I'm just gonna use the green, but I'm just gonna pull it. You can see that it's got a bit of a root rhizome that connects it to the other ones. So this whole plant can be like a whole little area. So this is probably connected underground. There, I pulled this whole one just for you to see. It breaks off easy, which tells me that it wants to break off, and it's also protecting the other ones in case some big weird animal has come along like me and wants to eat it. Now, young shoots like this, again, peeling them back, the youngest ones, skullcaps are all edible. They're not really like usually palatable, but in the spring, oh yeah, especially that tender base. It's like a salad in my mouth. Just, guess that's where salad goes. Anyway, yum, yum, and a little bit of dirt. Yum, yum. Still yum. All right. Wow. So yeah, those are pretty good. Again, spring greens. Now in this case, as I got further down the stem, or down the root, the rhizome, there's a bit more fiber, but still pretty fleshy. And that's one way I like to gauge with my spring foraging feasting is how much fiber is there? And if the plant is not that fibrous yet, but you know it will be if you've tried it later in the season, that's when we want to get it, just when it's just before it gets fibrous. And as I sit down and tune into this plant, I found one, I found another, but just looking here, I can see that I am in a patch, a mother patch. So there's some over here, over here. Over here is another nice one. I'll just pull this one out because I feel like that's a good one. There we go. There's a bunch here. But you'll notice when you get down to the ground and you stop for a minute and connect in with the plant, all of a sudden you'll start seeing so many more. All right, so we got our Marsh Skullcap. I'm going to take the top and I'm going to add that into my spring salad. And I'll take the bottom and I'll add that into my roots. We got our bottom roots, spring salad tops and shoots, and I'll pick one more. Same thing, kind of just following it along. In this case, it wanted to break off early. It's okay. Maybe I'll grab one more. I have just enough. There's probably a whole lot of them in here. Yeah, that one's nicely laid out. There we go. Okay. Trying to clean them. I like these brushes, right? See on the back, this is a mushroom harvesting knife, but it does allow me to kind of clean these things a little bit better. All right, got that in my roots. Now, as I'm out here, I see other plants, of course, but here's one that is, you know, in everyone's garden, and it's considered a noxious weed. It's actually not an edible plant, really, but I'm gonna pick it and just kind of show you how it can be made edible. And this is just a trick. If you're stuck in the woods or apocalypse happens or whatever it might be, you may want to know this trick. So this is a buttercup. Now, goats don't eat this, deer don't eat this, nobody eats it. It's got toxic alkaloids in it, or really I think it's actually more the oxalic acid and compounds like that. But it has these roots that are quite pronounced. So maybe I'll grab one more so we can sort of see a couple of them side by side. Here's another one. Now, one of the old tricks, I tried this once and it actually worked, but it's not something I do because it's really a famine food, is that it's something called paraboiling. So you can take these roots and you boil them in water and you throw the water out. And then you boil them again in water and you throw that water out. The toxic compounds leach out into the water and then they become tasty edibles. So you can actually eat buttercup if you do a paraboil first. So if you're stuck in a kind of famine time, I'm not going to add these to my root collection, but I'll just kind of give you the idea. I'd pull those off, harvest a bunch of these roots, boil them up, throw the water, boil them up, throw the water, maybe do it a third time, and then I could eat this like spaghetti. So that way you actually just get the starches in there and it's actually quite edible and it's not that bad. I tried this once, like I said, it tastes pretty good. It tastes bland, you know, you need to add spices, but there you go. So buttercup can be a tasty edible if in an emergency and you need some food. So right behind me is some salmonberry, and all of these kind of berries, the whole spring shoot is edible. So I can see, here's some little ones. We'll actually go up though to the ones that are already in flower so you kind of have a better idea, and you can see they're just starting to pop out. These salmonberries are gonna have a tasty berry on them. So we might wanna save them for the berry, but all the flowers like this are quite tasty as well. So I'll often pick these flowers, but it's not just the flowers, this whole flowering shoot. So I could actually take this whole bit and just pop that in my mouth. Not so bad. So what I might do for my salad is pick a few of these young buds, just like this. Just pick a few of those. I might take a few of the whole flowers. And one thing I love about flowering heads like this, and you kind of know this, it's sort of intuitive, they just pop right off, which is, plants naturally have that. You notice whenever you pick apples, if you've ever picked apples, that the stem just naturally detaches from the plant. It's like it's meant to be picked. So here we have a few of our nice fresh salmonberry flowers. As you can see, we can eat that whole thing, but we're just gonna put them in our salad. One thing that this one reminded me of is that many of these plants are very high in flavonoids and high in antioxidants in general and vitamin C. These are all things that are going to help us from scurvy and to get protection from oxidative damage. So really get our cellular beds better bathed in blood, to get more nourishment in our body. This time of year, eating flowering shoots is probably one of the best ways to really increase our immune system and support our overall cardiovascular health and just health in general. So I find that spring shoots, so this will be things like huckleberries and salmonberries and blueberries and raspberries and strawberries. All of these kind of berries are really an awesome way to just start the season off. All right, we haven't gone far. We've got another old friend of mine. This one's yellow dock. These leaves, this is kind of the yellow dock, curly dock. They're a classic sign of yellow dock. Spring yellow dock is one of the best for liver. So as a medicine, here's a root that I would harvest, especially in the spring if I want to do a little bit of liver cleansing and liver clearing. It's also slightly laxative, not too bad, but it is going to definitely wake up our colon, wake up our digestive tract. And just to see how easy that was to pull, well, that's the thing about spring herbs, and spring season is often the ground is quite moist. The other thing about yellow dock at this time of year is that these leaves are actually quite tender and I can eat them. They're not as tasty as some of my chickweed and stuff, but just kidding. Well, not really. You know, it's okay. Definitely a food. Definitely something I would eat in a pinch. But you know, again, just playing with it, I'm gonna look at the very youngest leaf. Let's see that. Maybe that is a little tastier. There we go. These uncurled leaves, a little bit better. The bigger they get, the more bitter they get. The more bitter they get, the more my body goes, whoa, that's not food. Yeah. Those young ones are pretty good. But really what I'm after here is these roots. So I'm gonna harvest one more. Hopefully this one has a little bit bigger root. You can see yellow dock can be pretty nice and hardy. Oh, it's so easy to pull right now. Okay. So there's some of these greens. I could steam them. The other thing I might do with something that's bitter like this, that whole paraboil thing I was talking about, I might do that where I steam them, but instead I give them a little light steam, throw the water, light steam, throw the water again to just make them tastier. Put the yellow dock, sorry, I'll put the young yellow dock leaves in there and take this nice big root and add it to my root pile. Again, yellow dock is one of the best spring cathartics to really move the digestive tract and really support the liver in getting a lot more of that cleansing action. Okay, there's one. Where did that other one go? Here we go. Trying to clean it up. Maybe I will take one more spring shoot. Okay. We're starting to get quite the pile of roots. So I'm a little early for this one. This one's Oregon Grape. I love the spring flowers. So they will pop out of here in this little spot here. Maybe what I can do is peel back and find something tasty to eat. But the spring flowers will come out and they'll be yellow. My son calls them nature's popcorn because they are super fresh and tasty and just really vibrant and delicious. And they're one of his favorite things. He just munches on them all spring. So I'll take a little bit. I'm just gonna cut this top, see if I can find anything in there. Again, the growing tips is where we want to explore. If you don't live in the same environment as me, I highly recommend you just get out and get curious. Start looking at the plants, picking them apart, finding what might be the most edible pieces and nibbling. I mean, Oregon Grape's pretty bitter typically, but this spring shoot here, not so bad. Not quite flowers yet, so obviously not really the food I want, but it's another one that we could take the root, right? Oregon Grape has got a great root bark. I'll just take one little one here, just to show you, kind of here, as I clean this up. See all that yellow? That's high in barberini, so I'll probably take, and I can take the whole stem like this. So really what we're looking for is the cambium layer here. And I might just take it on a piece of paper or something when I get home, take a few of these roots and just do this kind of nice, what I'll call the garbling process, the processing to pull off the part of the herb that we don't want and just keep the part that we do want, right? So very simple. Here we are. We're just taking the root bark. That's where all the barberini is. I've also heard that people have used this. It's very bitter, but they've stuck these roots into water that they weren't sure might have beaver fever or giardia or something. Super antibacterial. Didn't taste great, but it killed the giardia. So you're not sure if you can drink out of a stream, maybe stick a bit of Oregon Grape roots in your water bottle, shake it up for a half a day, and then drink that bitter water. What else do we have? Is that here Yerba Buena? I think that might be. I'm not sure. Tastes okay. Now you might notice, like, I am not afraid to nibble on plants. And I want to impart this to you, but I also want you to exercise with caution. There are a few that are toxic out there, so get to know those, like the foxglove, for example. It looks like it could be an edible leaf, but it's not. It's a toxic plant. So just Look in your book, find a few of those plants that are toxic, and just stay away from anything that looks like that. Get to notice their key identifying qualities, and away you go. Something else you'll see in the spring is things fall from the trees. So here we have Ooznia. Ooznia is a great herb for antibacterial and kind of immune support. Something that you'll know when you start to see it is the way Ooznia branches, and inside it has this elastic kind of cord in the central midrib. This is a powerful, potent medicine, and it's just really worth picking off the ground if you want to make a tincture or a tea or add it into some kind of medicine in the springtime, because usually it's growing all up in the trees in a healthy forest, and the wind or the storms blow it out of the tree. So that's the most sustainable way to harvest this one. It takes a long time to grow that much Ooznia. Now the problem with this, not a problem, but the challenge is how do you actually extract the chemistry? What I've found is you want to bruise it, break it up, mash it up, first maybe in a mortar and pestle or with your hands, and then decoct it, cook it up like a soup, and then also tincture it to get the oozniac acid. So you might make a dual extraction with Ooznia. It's a little more intensive way to make a tincture, but it's worth it when it comes to medicines like this, where you have a part of it that is a fungi, and so has that fungal cellular wall protection. Part of it is alginates, and part of it is bacteria. It has a lot of pieces of active chemistry in it, and tough cell walls that need to be broken open. So bruise it, smash it, mash it, decoct it, and tincture it. Here's a bit more. All right. Yeah, it's oozing with Ooznia. So I'm just gonna keep picking the Ooznia as I find it. There's another one over here. Coming out of these big trees. But you know, actually what caught my attention was this lettuce here. It's an actual wild lettuce. There's a couple more right here, but here's a good little one. This is actually wild lettuce. And this is one that is, gonna relax the digestive tract, so to speak. It has almost opiates in it, but it's quite tasty, and especially when it's young like this, it doesn't really have much of that chemistry. We could make a tincture though out of it as a nervine to kind of sedate and calm the nerves as it gets a little bigger. But right now, I'm just gonna take some of these and put them in my salad greens. We're just getting quite the greens here. Here's another great little show of it. You can see it's a good little wild lettuce stand. So again, I can pick them by hand is my preferred method, but I also might, with something like this, get in there and use a little knife. Okay, there's some wild lettuce. You know, and as I look up, I see a baby grand fir, and I want to talk about fir tips because I think that's just a favorite of mine, and I love adding them to a spring salad. So right here, this is a baby. I don't want to take too many off this baby if I want to see it grow, but we'll use it as an example. So these spring tips, I want to look for the youngest fresh growth. This is still too young in the season to have too much growth. So let's just give those a taste. I got a bit of that lemon flavor. Sorry, spitting them, but they're still a bit fibrous. So really what we're looking for is the spring growth, the fresh young growth. And it's just a little early in the season to have too much of that. Here's one that's maybe a little fresher. Oh yeah, these are still last year's growth. But this grand fir, just so you know, firs are flat, right? They got those flat needles. And the grand fir in particular has a real lemony flavor and really tender fir tips. So when it comes to making a salad, this can actually go right into our salad. We can eat these when they're young. These ones here are still last year, so I can make a tea with them, but they're not gonna be quite as juicy and decadent and delicious and tender as I would see later in the season. Okay, let's maybe try a couple of these. It's okay, but I've had better fir tips. I know those are gonna come in maybe a week or two, 2 weeks, 3 weeks. Come on, spring! So there's plenty more forest plants, but let's get into some of the plants we can find in our yard, in our lawn, in our garden, on the sides of the road, or next to kind of disturbed soils where humans are. So here's a kind of garden bed that we've had. We're just pulling it apart, and it's got a bunch of great plants in it. Even though none of these are what we want to use for our garden in the future, we pulled out all the rocks, we're getting ready to dig, and check this out. But here's one that you should really get to know, and you've seen these everywhere. These are daisies. So anytime you see daisies, know that the shoots, the leaves of daisies are all edible. So especially these young ones, I still got some of that lemony flavor in my mouth from that grand fir. That's just so delicious. But this daisy is so sweet. It really is. I'll show you a couple up close. Daisy leaves, all of them, when they're young, are edible like this, and they're quite sweet, actually. So they're gonna add a little bit of a sweetness to my salad. So here we go. I'm gonna pick a few of these. I think what I'll do is I'll use my knife this time, just for a little difference. See, there's quite a few, and I'm just gonna give them a little haircut. Thank you, daisies. I appreciate you. Thanks for coming into my salad today. Now, it might sound cheesy to talk to the plants, but I happen to know for a fact that when I talk to the plants, my heart sings. And when my heart sings, my salad gets even better. So thank you, plants. But I also think in the form of reciprocity and in just connection, we are part of this ecosystem. We are not outside of the petri dish. So by offering up a little bit of a thank you as we harvest, a little bit of a intentionality and gratitude and appreciation, the medicine and the food appreciates as well. Okay, all right, that's probably enough. Look at all those daisies. All right, so other ones that are right here. You know, obviously I talked a little bit about this blackberry, there's a bunch of that all over, but there's also these dandelions, right? And you may know this, but young dandelion leaves are quite tasty. When they get older, they get a lot more bitter. But young like this, you can even buy them in grocery stores. Some of these young, tender dandelion leaves. So I'm gonna pick a few of those, but I'm also gonna use the root. So since this one's kind of on the edge here, it's a good example of a whole dandelion. And I'll take the leaves, take a few of the nice looking ones anyway, and the youngest tender ones, maybe not these kind of more raggedy looking ones, just those young tender ones. Then I'll clean off this root a little bit, pull off some of that dirt, snip the rosette, take this, and stick these dandelion roots into my root collection. Roots and shoots. All right, now you can see I'm starting to get a bunch of different roots. It's a good thing I have a keen herbal eye and I know what's what, but you might find if you do what I'm doing right now, you might pick a bunch of things and then not know what it is when you get home. So either keep them separate or really get to know them and know their taste and know their characteristics. Here's another one. Now I carved a little bit off. Now another thing I was talking about spring herbs. Dandelion is a great one for the liver, right? So spring dandelion is a lot better and more liver protective and liver enhancing than fall dandelion. So if I'm really looking for a liver herb, this is the time of year to be picking it. This is also the time of the year, according to Chinese medicine, that the liver is most active. It is the liver season, is spring. So that's when we want to do our liver cleansing. I'm going to take some of these greens, kind of leave this bit here, pick out and garble a couple of not so nice ones, and the rest are going in my salad. Got my roots, that's another good one there. Roots are going in there, and away we go. So we got these daisies, we've got these dandelions, but we've also got a couple other great ones in here. There's a bunch more daisy around here I could see, a bit of that wild lettuce too, and a lot more dandelion. There's some thistles, we'll get to those, but this one here is what I want to get to next. This is Queen Anne's lace, AKA wild carrot. Now this is a great, great food. It's also a medicine. It's been used to support kidney health and liver health to a degree, but mostly kidney health. But it's classically used, the seeds anyway, as a contraceptive. They've been used for hundreds of years that way to help protect and prevent women from getting pregnant. Now I'm not recommending that. They're not an ideal one. Many herbal contraceptives are actually hard on the body, and that's how they work to protect a woman from having a baby, because you know that a healthy woman with a healthy uterus has a healthy baby, right? So these kind of herbs are not my recommendation, but that's actually how they've been used for a long time. Anyway, the part we're going to use is this root, and this is, as I alluded to, a very tasty root. It's wild carrot, and it has a pretty darn nice looking taproot, which is quite sweet. It's a biannual, so we're gonna see this little guy, especially with all this basal rosette, pop up a nice flowering shoot that is gonna have those seeds that can be used as a medicine for the kidneys or other things like I mentioned before. But I'm gonna take that off and I'm gonna just eat this root. Now I'm gonna just kind of clean it. And like I said, it's like a carrot, so a bit of dirt on there, but man, does it ever taste like a carrot? Like literally, it tastes like a carrot. Here, this is a good example. You can kind of see the leaf structure here. They're kind of these compound. They form an umbel as a flower. That's a nice looking wild carrot. So another thing I might do, and I'll do it for this one, I'll leave it on here, but if I'm gonna have a bunch of different roots, I might actually leave the foliage on there so I can tell what it is. And I'm gonna pick another wild carrot right here. Oh, that looks like a good one. Oh yeah. Clean that off. All right, so we got some wild carrots. What else do we have in this little kind of wasteland bed? Oh yeah, these thistles. I wanted to show you this. Come on over here. Something to note is that all thistles, these are both thistles I think, have something they're protecting. They all have something to protect. So in this case, what is a thistle protecting? It's fleshy innards, right? Oh, this is rocky soil. This is one thing I like about the hori hori. It's small, it can get in there. There we go. These kind of thistles, the way to deal with a thistle is upside down. If you turn it upside down, you should be able to cut off those spiky leaves real nice and easy. All right. And then inside here, as we get into there, clean this up a little bit. This part is all edible. And again, I might just do a little bit of pruning, a little bit of grooming. I'm gonna clear off some of that. Let's give it a taste. A little bit of dirt still, but You know, thistles are quite hydrating too. They actually have a lot of electrolytes in them. So they're usually quite deep rooted. So you're gonna actually get quite a bit of nutrition into that. So this is a nice tasty edible. If I am out there and I need something to eat, I can literally eat that whole root. Oh yeah, not bad. You may also though find if some roots are starting to get a little more tough or fibrous, that rather than eat the whole root, you're gonna chew it up and suck out the juices. And then you have like a little bit of fiber that you're gonna discard. All right. Now I know this is not the kind of food you're gonna find at 7-Eleven. This is not the kind of food you're gonna find in the I guess, teased out genetics that is growing in most people's gardens. But this type of food enhances our resilience and builds up our vitality and tunes us back into our planet. So maybe we might only need 1% of our diet like this. But that 1% of our diet is most likely more nutritionally dense than the rest of our diet. So choose wisely how you incorporate adding wild foods like this in, but I really encourage you to start playing with them, to start adding them in and start finding some of these. Okay, couple in here. Is that oregano? Let me try this. Yeah, a little bit of oregano in this old patch. We'll talk about that, but really what I was looking at was this one right beside it called peppercrest. This is a weed. There's a bunch of oregano here too, so we'll talk about that. Here's another one. This one actually has, not this, but this, has a couple of flowers on it. This is a type of crest, peppercrest, and this one's almost out, so I'm gonna pull the whole thing, but This whole thing has a nice peppery flavor. So pepper crusts, here's another one right here. Give you a good close up. Okay. That's another one that's going to be good in our salad. We'll put a couple of pepper crusts in there. I saw a few more. Where was this one? Oh, I'm squishing it. Now I don't have to pull the whole plant like I'm doing. You can just pick some of the leaves, which is probably more ideal, but in this case, I'm gonna pick the whole plant. Okay. All right. Okay. And then I had also mentioned that I saw some oregano in here. Now you guys know oregano, I don't need to speak much about it, but we may wanna add a few of these kind of herbs or spicy things like that to our salad. Give it a little more enhanced flavor. I'll put one little sprig of oregano, maybe two little sprigs of some relocalized oregano in there. If you're in your garden, you're gonna have some kitchen herbs. Highly recommend things like peppermint. You know, I've got a bit of lemon balm. I'm gonna add some of that type of stuff in. So we'll go to the peppermint patch and we'll just grab a couple of baby shoots. Just when it comes to picking mints, again, we just want to pick those tips, those flowering tips. And mints really are cooling to the digestive tract. And so they're really nice on a hot summer day. Often I will save my mints till midsummer, crush them up with some sugar, make a little mojito or a mocktail kind of thing with mint and soda water. Great, great summer drink. But in this case, we're just going to put a couple of mint leaves into our salad. There's a whole lot of it growing here. It's just getting started. With leaves like this, they are best to prune before they go to flower. You can pick them after they've gone to flower, but really the plants that bolt up into flowering stalks, the energy goes into those flowers once they're in that state. So leaf season is usually before the flower season, which means spring is typically our leaf season. So we're just at the very beginning of leaf season here, but this is gonna keep going and going and going and going and going and going until they flower. Okay, this is kind of cheating, but these are chives, so they're not really wild greens, but I am gonna take a couple of them to add to our salad. Spring chives, amazing, super easy to grow, but they're gonna add a nice flavor. So I'm just gonna cut back a couple more and add just a few chives to this salad. So I have some violets here. I just want to add a little bit of pretty to this salad. Johnny Jump Ups and violets are kind of spring flowers that are often quite edible and tasty. So we'll just put a couple of those in just to make our salad look pretty. But you can also eat violet leaves. So, oh yeah, those are pretty tasty. So add a little bit of that, a little couple of violet leaves, little these kind of heads. This is something that you'll find lots of wild violets. So, you know, at our old place, we had tons of these growing around. There's probably a few around here, but for now, we're gonna pick out of this little flower pot. All right, I'm gonna take these roots and just sort and sift them. I like to have a nice bowl of water, kind of clean them off. You might take a scrub brush, but I think this should be fine. I'm gonna start with the wild carrots. And again, just do all the processing right when you get home. Now in this case, kind of a poor practice was to mix all these roots together because it's potential that I could mix up some of them. A lot of them look real similar, but you know, you'll be able to tell the difference a little more once they are washed and cleaned. AKA these wild carrots are quite white, right? All of this again is the garbling process, we call it, which is clearing off the parts that are not going to be used as food or medicine. All right, that's dandelion, dandelion, one more wild carrot here. Oh, I see another one in there. Okay, so there's our wild carrots. Now as I look, I want to just taste this one. I thought so. You can see there's just a slight difference. That is a dandelion root. Looks pretty close. I mean, they're both Compositae family. Not gonna hurt me, but it's better to know, right? How about this one? Another dandelion. Okay, dandelions. my Marsh Skullcap roots. My Blackberry. Okay. One more Skullcap root. Oh no, this is the Thistle root. Okay. Now that I've washed the roots, it's time to process them. Some of them are going to be medicine, some of them are food. So in the case of the wild carrot, if I'm just going to eat this, well, you know the drill. Just start eating it. Or I might take these wild carrots, put them in like dry them off a little bit and put them in a bag in the fridge and store them for later. Or in the wild green salad, I might cut a few up and add them to that. So that's the wild carrots. Chew. Okay. With roots like dandelion, sometimes I'm going to have bigger roots than this. If I've got nice big honkin' dandelion roots, I'm going to slice them down the middle. I don't really need to, but I'll use this as an example and store them like that. I tend to like to store my roots whole or larger pieces. They last longer if I'm going to store them for over a year dried. So what I'll do is I'll dehydrate these at this point, either putting them on racks or sticking them in a dehydrator. Another method that I might do with dandelion is I might cut them sideways. And so I might take a bunch of these little rootlets and just cut them into chunks like so, right? Just kind of sideways so that I've got what would be the right size for a tea. That's going to take a bit more time, but I can easily do that. And or I'll take the whole root and just store it like that. So either slice them lengthways, slice them sideways, or store them as whole roots. Any bigger than this, really I'd say any bigger than a dime, it's not going to dry well. It's going to take a lot longer. I tend to like my root sizes to be, this is like the maximum I would like as a whole root. So usually, even in this case, I'd probably dry it down like that. And we go store them like that. Okay, when it comes to yellow dock roots, these are a little thicker. Now these ones aren't as big as some of them, but often they get pretty hardy. So I might use snips like this and just kind of, because it's a lot easier than my knife, and clip them down like this and make nice slices. I'll dehydrate those and then we'll store them like that. Those are perfect for a tea. The other thing, because yellow dock is super high in iron, I might make a like iron syrup or something like that, where I'm going to make a decoction, add honey, do something along that line, and make it into more of a long-standing syrup to really pull out those minerals. So I might do that. The other way we might do with these is either with a big chef knife, or just like the dandelion roots, if they're fresh and not too strong, I can do them lengthways as well, just to make it so that there's enough space for the drying to happen evenly throughout the root. This is a prettier looking product than slicing them this way. So this is typically how I will use them. They're easier to blend in with other herbs too when they're in smaller pieces. So these longer pieces like that might not be as ideal. When it comes to thistle roots, I don't usually do a lot with thistle roots. I pretty much just eat them, but that's another one that I might slice sideways. Yeah, I would probably just eat this most of the time fresh. I'm not going to really dry these, although they can be used as medicine. So you could add them into a food like that, but they're really actually pretty good. It's amazing to me how tasty a thistle can be. When it comes to things like blackberry roots, these are much more fibrous. I can cut them up with my knife, making them into smaller size pieces to be able to use in tea blends, but it's more likely with these bigger woody bits that I'm going to need to use pruning shears. So I'm going to probably do the same thing, sideways cutting. I've also seen some of the kind of more like biodynamic chefs and things tend to like to do roots at an angle, and they say that it is a better, so like doing them like one angle that way, one angle this way, one angle this way, one angle that way. And that can work too with the wild carrots if I'm going to cut them, just as an example. That's a little more interesting. And again, the way you cut them is going to affect the mouthfeel if you're eating them fresh. So you might want to play with a couple of different ways. It's amazing. Try this with an apple. Cut it in 2 different ways and notice how different the apple tastes when you cut it sideways versus lengthways. Okay, so that might be that one. Now, I've not really used a lot of these roots either. This is the Marsh Skullcap root. So if I was, same thing though, it's much fleshier. I'll probably just slice them sideways. Essentially what I'm trying to say is make them into a user format that is going to be easy for you to work with later on if you're drying them. Make sure that they're small enough that you actually get full dehydration. One of the problems with thick roots or thick leaf stems of any plant when you're dehydrating it is it looks like it's dry on the outside, but there's a lot of moisture still on the inside. You put it in a bag, the moisture comes to the edge and it rots or molds or goes bad. You need less than 12% humidity in your dried products in order to keep them for a longer period of time. All right, there you go. Just gonna chop up a couple more blackberry roots here. I probably will make blackberry roots into a tincture. Some of these I might make into a tea. Some of them I might make into just a dried herb that I might powder up later. Like the dandelion, we might roast it. Yeah, one last one I wanted to show you. I did in the field already, but the Oregon grape or something like Devil's Club, we would use the root bark and we're just gonna take the outer cambium layer, right? We might do the same thing, say if we were doing cherry bark or willow bark. We're gonna whittle the roots, right? Or barks. So if it's the stem of a plant or a root bark, same kind of methodology. We're whittling it and we're using this kind of whittled bit as our medicine. Dehydrating that in whatever way we can. There you go. That's some roots. So I'm just gonna make a quick salad dressing. Probably the only thing I haven't foraged from this is this garlic from last year. I'm gonna mix it in with a bit of my kombucha vinegar. This is just a kombucha that's gone past its time, we'll say. It's turned into vinegar. So add a little bit of garlic in there. We've got some ponzu that my wife makes. It's really a umami kind of flavor. Really nice. Just a little drop of that. And a little hemp seed oil. And a little pumpkin seed oil. You may want to do like olive oil. This is really an oil and vinegar kind of dressing. I may also take some of these onions and add that in, but for now, just really simply this. I also like ginger in this, I like sesame oil. Also, obviously balsamic vinegar can be good. Give it a little shake, let that macerate for a bit. That's going to be our dressing. And then I'm just going to pull out some of these, chop up the ones that I need to, and just have a little look at what we actually got here. Let's do a little recap. Okay. So there's, as you can see, it's bountiful. We've got plenty. In order to make this a nice salad though, I'm gonna need to just kind of go through it one more time and pick out and kind of tune up so that it's got all a similar mouth feel is what we're looking for. So I won't go through each individual one again, but I just kind of want to show you how much abundance there is here. All of this is literally within 5-minute walk of my house, some of it right outside the front door. And in any environment, whether it's a city or the country, you're gonna find a lot of spring edibles. Now, some of them may not be good, AKA dog pee or human contaminants or car and pollution, traffic, stuff like that. So you wanna be careful in the city about what you're choosing to eat. You may wanna wash some of it. I tend to think that dirt helps you grow, so I like to eat a little bit of dirt in my food. You also may want to go through it and do what I'm doing now, which is just do a double check to make sure you didn't get any, big leaves or weird foreign critters in there, bugs, that kind of stuff. Say quality control. But know that as long as it's not polluted, as long as it's not a toxic plant, which there's very few of, and once you know what those are, it's easy to identify. There's a lot to experiment with here. There's a lot of vitality and a lot of nutritional wisdom, we'll say, that you can start to incorporate into your diet. Okay, so I think what I will pull out and maybe not put so much into is these bigger leaves. And things like the oregano, I will pull off the kind of hardier stems. And typically with oregano, stuff like that, I might take the oregano and the pepper crest and stuff like that and mix it in with my dressing. But today we won't. We'll just pull off some of the bigger stems and just do a little garbling. So in this case, with all my dandelion and my wild lettuce, because they're kind of long and the texture is a little different from other stuff, I'm going to just give them a little light chop. Then those are going in to our salad as our base. Same thing with my onions. Kind of want these chives nice and small. Put those in at the end. I'm pulling out these skullcaps and the yellow dock. I'm also going to take a little bit of one of these flowers and just have a whole feel of it. Yeah, see, I might not want the stem butts as much of these flowers, so I might just peel those off, stick some of just the tops in. So I might do a bit of garbling, is what I'm really trying to say. The mint, I'm gonna break up into small pieces, so I kind of get nice, freshy, minty bits as I go. Most of this other stuff, some of these small, tiny cleavers, just kind of rip them up. Pull out any tall things. The chickweed, same thing. I might actually just take a lot of this chickweed and give it one kind of chop down the middle. 2 chops. Pepper crust, same thing. Just break it up. Wow. And then see, you're gonna get sticks. I got things like that in there. All of this miner's lettuce, I might give that. Now I don't need to chop those up, but for sake of mouthfeel, the daisy leaves and stuff like that are all pretty good. Typically, I wouldn't probably put them all in the same container, but for today's sake, we did. Might just pull out a couple more of these fibrous salmonberry stems or bases and just take the tops, stick them in. Okay. All right, a couple of viola leaves. All right, here we go. Oh. Now you can make this as pretty as you want. In my case, as you can see, I've added everything into this wild salad other than my Marsh Skullcap and my yellow dock. All of this is pretty tasty, and it should be a nice meal. Now, one of the beauties of adding a dressing is it will cut through some of the bitterness of the salad. So the vinegar will also open up the salivation. The oil will slow down the absorption, and really the whole thing is just going to be a fibrous, nutritional meal for my body. The other thing is I tend to really soak my salad sometimes in dressing, especially wild salads, to kind of add more of that maceration to it, and I might drink up all the juice after. Oh man, this is seriously super tasty, but something you may also want to think about is mixing this in with your conventional salads, with salad greens that have some of the genetics sort of teased out of the wildness out of them to kind of just bolster up that salad, rather than doing what I've done, which is eat an entirely wild salad. Although I highly recommend you do this, I still would say that just adding a little bit of wild to your salad is a great way to go too. All right, my friends, I'm gonna mow down this salad. I'm excited. It's full of wild nutrition. And I just want to invite you, if you liked kind of this process, to get out and forage for yourself, to get curious, to get fun, comfortable with the wild plants around you. There's a lot of nutritional density, there's a lot of biodiversity and just wild wisdom that can be incorporated into our diet. This is not meant to be our only food source, but it is a great addition to really bring more vitality and health to the body. Okay, have fun in your foraging season, and we'll see you next time. Bottoms up. Mmm.